Welcome to the study. This is Professor Hemlock. Today we are going to be reviewing a viewer-submitted video on a DOS M0. So this is a non-higher keystone, and I think this is really important to review. And I want to thank the viewer for submitting the video and having the courage to share this with us. That way we can help everyone improve regardless of your current skill level. So let's kind of go right into the video here. Now, I did pick specific segments of this video, so we're going to be skipping around going to key points in the video where there's room for improvement and kind of what's going on these specific times. So kind of reviewing the user's stats here. It's a 198 eye level character, and we have a pretty even distribution of stats. At this point, when you're a lower item level, it just equip the best item level gear, right? So nothing wrong here. And let's get into the run here. So the first pull here, it looks like it is just a single pull, so we're not doing the big open pull. It is an M0, so they're probably not trying to push speed or anything. So right now, kind of what I'm noticing off the bat is you are clicking abilities as opposed to using your keybinds you have set up. So that is something that's really, really important. To maximize speed and ability, you're going to want to keybind things. As well, right there, you didn't use any cooldowns. So we have Rune of Power available right off the bat there. If you're going to do the small pull into the big pull, you would have wanted to Rune of Power first. And then this pull, you would have had your AP go for it. So right here, it looks like you're opening with just spamming Arcane Explosion instead of using the traditional opener AoE DPS rotation. So this would have been a great pull to utilize AP on. So we're clicking on abilities. Moving to more of a keybind system is going to be very efficient. And then we need to start utilizing cooldowns. So you wanted to open with AP there, you wanted to put Touch of the Magi on one of the big skeleton dudes, and then you wanted to go into a full AoE rotation that if you haven't watched my AoE rotational video, please get a chance to watch that video, and you'll be able to understand how to do a better AoE rotation. Now coming up here, this is going to be a similar situation as by the looks of it here. So we have another big AoE pack right here. We have all of our CDs up. This is a great time going into it to be able to put in a bunch of damage. So right now we would open with Touch of the Magi. We would apply that to the primary big dude. And then we'd AP. You do put Touch of the Magi out, but you barrage into Arcane Explosions. So you're not maximizing that Touch of the Magi window. And also now what we've done is we've desynced our cooldowns. So now Touch of the Magi isn't on sync with Palm, it isn't on sync with AP, and it isn't on sync with Shifting Power. So we're not, right now we've kind of misused our cooldowns to where we're not going to have everything coming up and at the same time, and this is going to cause problems later when we're trying to effectively cooldown cycle. So that's a very important note for that pack right there. So here, this is the Ardenweald area. Now, again, we're looking at what cooldowns our user has available here. So everything is available, and you can even tell they already called for a bigger pull, which is great. So bigger pull, now we can utilize our cooldowns, and we can start applying a bunch of damage. I also kind of find it funny that if anyone hasn't noticed yet, we have 3 mage specs in this video. That's just kind of funny luck there. Okay, so big AoE pull, right? Now this is that situation where you want to utilize all of our buttons. So we want to be using all of our major cooldowns right here. We do drop Rune. This is great. This is our first time we've really utilized a cooldown, and we're going to output a little bit more damage for that. Now we do desync our Shifting Power with our AP, so we've effectively just, again, we've gone back to that whole like desyncing of cooldowns problems. We want to use AP, we want to use Touch, and we want to use Shifting Power all together. That way we're maximizing our cooldown rotation. So now we're currently, it looks like the tank's moving to pull more. So you're actually doing, like, this is a good move right here. What you're doing is you're just simply using a builder, right? Since the tank is going, it looks like he's continuing to pull more mobs, you're going to just do a small, slow rotation with Arcane Explosion. You're not needing to utilize any cooldowns until the mobs are more tightly packed. So this is actually a good decision to do right here. Now, unfortunately, right there, you can kind of see what occurs is we butt pull. We pull too far back. We're not utilizing our camera correctly, so we're not having a good field of vision, right? So this is part of the problem when you're clicking things. If you're still clicking abilities, it is hyper important you discontinue clicking and switch to a keybind system. That way you can use your mouse to have a better awareness of the battlefield by constantly panning and viewing what's going on around you. That way you can avoid situations like this where you butt pull. Now say you do butt pull and you get additional mobs on you. Now in this situation, this is where you want to use a defensive, right? So in this situation, I would pop mirror images. It's probably my first defensive option. And it looks like our healer is just going to use all of his throughput and keep us alive. And again, this is an M0, right? So punishing mistakes just aren't generically going to be as punishing. So this is definitely something that can be improved upon. Now, again, we go into that same situation where we're not utilizing our cooldowns. We have Arcane Power on cooldown still. We didn't use any defensives. Now we have aggro again right now of a mob. If you're having a bunch of threat issues with the tank, this would be a great time to use mass invisibility now. Now you could just invis, not only you're taking reduced damage, but the mobs are going to drop threat on you while you're invisible. So in that situation, we could have used our double defensives there to prevent the healer from needing to put out a bunch of healing on us. In addition, we need to start using keybinds to effectively manage our battlefield awareness. Okay? I'm going to move on to the next timestamp here. Now this is going to be the first boss pull. So they're doing the order in reverse here. Nothing wrong with that. It's an M0, doesn't matter. So the other mage did cast Time Warp. Now at this point you pop mirror images. That's fine. It's a little early because you don't actually need to. At this point you don't have Chain Lightning or Arcing Lightning or any major debuffs on you. We don't open with our Arcane Power here. So on our initial opening of this boss, you had all of your major benefits up. So you're actually using the Time Warp legendary, we can kind of see here. So you have Time Warp, you have a 30% haste buffed, you're capped on Arcane Explosion Clearcast procs, or Arcane Missiles Clearcast procs, and you have AP up. So at this time, this would actually be, right now, cast AP. And we kind of oomed ourselves by just spamming Arcane Blast, because we got to think we have Time Warp, we have our 30% haste buff, we have a ton of haste. So when we're spamming Arcane Blast, we're going to go And now, when we have Clearcast procs at full, what we should do is evocate into a full AP go, and then we'll be able to maximize these cooldowns we have advantage of. Right there, it looks like you didn't understand. The boss drops a mechanic, a little circle, and it'll shift you up in the air. So you do want to move out of those when you can. And now because you didn't, now you have a debuff where you're going to take a consistent tick of damage. So right here, now we utilize AP after our evocation, but what happened to our Time Warp and Bloodlust effects, right? We're looking at our buffs. We have 9 seconds left on AP, but our Time Warp and our legendary effect are going to go away. So we're not going to have synced those up. We no longer are going to have our massive amount of haste benefits, and we're not going to be able to pump a bunch of damage into that cycle. It looks like we also still have Touch of the Magi ready to use. Before you ever use Arcane Power, you always want to apply Touch of the Magi. There is no situation where you're going to really benefit from casting Arcane Power without Touch of the Magi. Those two cooldowns are best buddies. You want to always use them together. So right now, we've lost our Time Warp and Bloodlust effects. We didn't use Touch of the Magi, and we're already in our AP go. So we've got some single target rotational work that needs to be done, right? Again, now we have Chain Lightning on us, so we're taking Arc Light damage. We have 4 stacks. of the Arcane Lightning, and in addition to that, we do have the debuff from the boss taking continuous damage. So our healer is having to have a lot more throughput on healing us there. Again, when you get to higher key levels, even at like a plus 10, plus 8, those mechanics will become killer mechanics, and you will take a lot of damage and you will die from those mechanics. So it's very important to understand what bosses do and be aware of how to avoid those different mechanics. Okay, I'm going to move around to our next time here. So now we're in the Mana Storm section here, the good old mech section. So these mobs do a haymaker effect. And it looks like we're not opening with our DPS rotation correctly here. So I want to pause the video right now because I think this is a good point to make. So you had cast Presence of Mind when you were not at full charges. And the boss was, or the little mob here, the more elite mob, if you would, is doing a damage mechanic. So you're going to take 5,600 damage every single tick of this haymaker. So you got to get out of those mechanics. If this were a Mythic Keystone, you would have died to this mechanic right here. Okay. In addition to that, you did not have arcane charges when you cast Presence of Mind. Presence of Mind is a great utilization because it speeds up that cast time, and it's better to be used with other cooldowns. So again, we kind of go back into this cooldown cycling conversation. We want to start cycling our cooldowns together. We want to use Touch of the Magi, Presence of Mind, and AP together. That way we're maximizing as much damage output as we can possibly have. And if you are ending up where you can't avoid getting out of a mechanic, use a defensive option to make sure you don't die while you're in that mechanic. Right there, you did have invisibility available, and you could have avoided taking damage from that by casting invisibility. Okay. Now this is the 3-pack before the boss. This is a great situation where you're not going to have time before the boss to hold cooldowns, but you can use Rune in this situation. So we would go into a little bit of a mini DPS situation, a mini go, if you would. Now right there, you cast Arcane Missiles multiple times, not only while you didn't have clear cast procs, but while there was 3 mobs still alive. So you don't want to cast Arcane Missiles outside of clear cast. Not only is it a DPS reduction, but the mana cost is extremely high and will drain your mana. So right now, you're low on mana when you're about to go into a boss fight. So you're kind of hoping to regen mana prior to starting that boss fight. So again, this is if there's more than 2 mobs, Arcane Explosion is going to be your most efficient damage source if you're not utilizing cooldowns. In addition to that, do not cast Arcane Missiles while you're not having a clear cast proc. That's just super important for mana conservation and upping your DPS overall. So now going into this boss, there are a lot of different mechanics to avoid and actually soak. So something to be aware of here. Now we do not, so like right there, you got your Time Warp Legendary effect. This would be a great time to start with your Arcane Power and do a good single target burst rotation using Touch of the Magi and AP. So right here, you've got the debuff right now. So since we've got the debuff right now, we need to make sure this goes through Millhouse. So you do miss Millhouse with the debuff, and then after this hits right now, it's already gone through, it didn't hit Millhouse. This is where you'd utilize your Shimmer charges. You have 2 Shimmer charges left. You would Shimmer out of the way, and now you don't get stunned. You can continue DPS, and if you had lined it up correctly, Millhouse would have been stunned. So a lack of awareness has caused us to not only get stunned and reduce DPS during our major go phase, but that would have, on a higher key, this would have caused the boss to kill us, essentially. So very important things to note here. And of course, Millhouse does go down. Now right there, you utilize Shifting Power without having AP on CD. So you didn't get any of the benefits of utilizing that shifting power besides simply the damage effects. And that's just not enough to actually make it worth it. You want to try and have as many abilities on cooldown as possible to maximize that shifting power. So we do AP right here, and we had a bunch of clear casts, which is really good. We were able to use those clear casts into our arcane missiles, so that was able to improve our DPS by a lot right there. That's really good. But we could have more effectively used our cooldowns when we used our time warp at the exact same time as we had arcane power. So we had our time warp legendary effect, we had arcane power up. If you'd utilized that then, you would have been able to synergize those cooldowns and output a lot more DPS. So very important to be aware of your cooldowns and how to properly utilize those. So this is a great, so you can see this little aura around you. There's a jug back there that Night Fae can hit and break, and then you'll be able to silence the mobs in it. So, okay, so someone actually called that out in the chat, that to pull this mob back to the urn, but there, the guy is not going to pull the mob back to the urn, it looks like here. So again, we did the same thing, right? We utilized Presence of Mind to simply cast Arcane Explosion when we had no charges. So not only did it not do any damage, but it wasn't utilized with any other cooldown to maximize DPS output. So since you did have Arcane Power on cooldown, but Touch of the Magi wasn't and Rune wasn't, you should have dropped your Rune, cast Touch of the Magi, Palm, Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast, and then just kept spamming, then utilizing your clear casts, weaving them in with your Arcane Blasts to maximize DPS output there. Spamming Arcane Missiles, again, you're just simply spamming it, so you're not getting as much DPS out of the Arcane Missiles as you would be spamming Arcane Blast, and it's draining the mana much, much, much faster. Okay, let's skip ahead a little bit. So right here on this pack, it looks like this is a smaller pack, and we're only one pack away from the boss now, right? After this pack dies, we're fighting Hakar directly after. So something to be aware of is now cooldown management. You're about to cast Arcane Power right here when the pack is already at half health. So you just utilized Arcane Power, full duration, and then the pack died instantly, right? So you have over 50% of your arcane power left. So that right there is just a bad use of cooldowns. So now we didn't get to utilize all of the damage of our arcane power, and now we're also not going to have it up when we go into this boss fight. So that's very important things to note there. Always try and make sure your cooldowns are being utilized as effectively as possible and as often as possible. So we can kind of see, like, this player that submitted the video is, we're kind of getting to learn the spec a little bit more, right? When to use cooldowns, when not to use cooldowns. Something to really focus on is to making sure you're taking advantage of your cooldowns, utilizing arcane power as much as possible on packs as effectively as possible. I would definitely recommend utilizing the videos I currently have available for taking a look at them and see how I'm doing my single target rotation, how I'm doing my AoE rotation, so you can maximize your own DPS output. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the final boss here. Now, there's a lot of keynotes with this final boss. There is a lot of mechanics to do, so it's very important to be aware of these mechanics and know how to counter them, right? So we're starting off here, the ABCs of playing any caster, always be casting. So right there in that intro, you had stood there and were not casting any damaging abilities. Mazala is thankfully pretty forgiving in this aspect, because what really matters with Mazala is that you are going to kill your shade before the boss has anything. But right now, we could have utilized a rune, and we could have been doing a gentle single target rotation and saving evocation till prior to our little spawn that we have to kill. Now we're standing in a lot of damaging mechanics right now. We just got hit by a frontal cone, and we just got hit by the blast. Those both did, between 10 and 20,000 damage. So you're really forcing your healer to take a lot of pressure off of you by healing a bunch, and you didn't use any defensive abilities to counter that damage, or you have 2 charges of Shimmer left. You could have utilized Shimmer to prevent that damage from occurring. Now here, it looks like we made the mistake of not properly ordering who is going into which portal. You took the same portal as another player, and because you did, now you're going to have to 2-phase this boss instead of single-phasing it. With this boss, you want to always have one DPS take its own portal, and then the tank and healers take their 4th portal. That way, you're able to essentially 1-phase this boss when Bwansamdi comes out, applies a massive haste buff, and does a massive amount of damage to this boss. So in this situation right here, we still have all of our single target cooldowns available. We have Touch of the Magi available. We have Arcane Power available. And essentially, we have a bunch of damage that we could be utilizing here and really should be utilizing. So I'm going to kind of stop the video here. I think this is a good ending point. And I want to kind of just end on a summary of what we kind of just looked at, right? The most major takeaway we can have is keybinding effectively. Using our keybinds, having everything keybind, and that will take a bunch of pressure off of clicking. We'll have better battlefield awareness, and we can use our mouse to view that battlefield effectively. Utilizing Arcane Power more often and effectively utilizing it. Make sure you're aware of what is the most optimal single target rotation and AoE DPS rotation, and then try and utilize Arcane Power as much as possible. Utilizing it, I mean, you're kind of going for every single time it's off cooldown is really what our goal is. And then being aware of mechanics. If you are new to the game or new to a spec, try and always at least look into the adventure journal that Blizzard has available to see what boss mechanics you may not be aware of if you're going into it, especially on higher key difficulties. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I really want to thank again our viewer for submitting this video. It definitely takes a lot of courage to have someone break down your gameplay and tell you need to be better, right? So thank you so much again for this. If you're interested in submitting your gameplay to me, please feel free to. I have a link to a Discord channel in my About section on my YouTube. You can follow that, join the Discord, and then simply link to a YouTube post where you post your video on YouTube. Try and clean your UI if you can to make sure it's full screenable. And then I'll be able to review your gameplay. I want to thank everyone for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 95% of people that watch my videos do not subscribe, and it would really help me continue make great Arcane Mage content and hopefully expand upon Arcane Mage and also do other Mage content as well. I want to thank everyone for watching, and have a great day.